It is November 4th, 1960. The air smells like wet asphalt, burnt rubber and stale tobacco. A man steps out of a steel mill in Detroit. His hands are covered in black grease, his back aches, but in his shirt pocket sits a paper envelope that feels heavier than a gold bar. It contains $98. To you watching this right now, that is a tank of gas and a cheap dinner. To him, it is a kingdom. He walks into a dealership on his way home. He doesn't need a credit check. He doesn't need a co-signer. He points at a brand new Chevy Impala, gleaming under the showroom lights with chrome that shines like a mirror, and he puts a down payment on the counter that came from just 2 weeks of sweating on the assembly line. He drives that machine home to a 3-bedroom house that costs less than what you pay for a used Toyota Camry today. This image feels like a hallucination. It feels like a lie we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. But the terrifying truth is that this was the baseline, it was the standard. And looking at those old photos now feels like looking at evidence from a crime scene. A robbery so massive, so slow and so calculated that most of us didn't even notice until we looked at our bank accounts and realized we were drowning. If you are tired of wondering where that life went, go ahead and hit the like button right now, because we are about to tear down the curtain on the greatest economic murder mystery in history. The man opens his front door. The house is warm. The fridge is full of red meat, real butter and fresh milk. His wife is home, not exhausted from a second job, but cooking dinner. There is no pile of overdue credit card bills on the counter. There is no student loan debt looming over their heads like a guillotine. There is just silence, the silence of financial safety, a silence that has been stolen from you. You look at his life and you feel a mix of jealousy and rage. You should, because the math behind his life is not just different, it is an entirely different universe. In 1960, the median home price was $11,900. The median family income was $5,600. Do the math. He could pay off his entire house in 2 years of salary. Today, you would need 10, maybe 15 years of every single penny you earn without eating, without driving, just to touch the principal. We are not just talking about inflation. We are talking about the systematic dismantling of the American soul. He sits down in his armchair and lights a cigarette. He doesn't know that the ground beneath his feet is about to shift. He doesn't know that the single income miracle is already dying. He thinks this is how it will always be. He is wrong. And to understand how we lost it, we have to look at the blood on the ledger. We have to look at the exact moment the clock struck midnight on the American dream. Fast forward 5 years. It is 1965. The colors of the decade are getting brighter, but the edges of the picture are starting to curl. Our worker walks into the same grocery store, but the air feels different. He pushes his cart down the aisle and stops at the meat counter. The steak he bought every Friday without thinking is now 10 cents more. It doesn't sound like much. It sounds like a rounding error. But he feels a tiny knot form in his stomach. He swaps the ribeye for ground beef. He tells himself he just prefers burgers this week. He is lying. This is the first crack in the dam. The water is seeping in, drop by drop. You know this feeling. You have stood in that same aisle, staring at a box of cereal that costs $8, wondering when cereal became a luxury item. If you have ever put an item back on the shelf because the price tag made you physically sick, tell me in the comments what item it was. I read every single one because it proves we are all living the same nightmare. Back in 1965, a new predator entered the ecosystem. It didn't look like a monster. It looked like a rectangular piece of plastic. The credit card. Suddenly, banks were whispering in ears, telling families they didn't need to wait for payday. They could have it all now. It was sold as freedom. It was actually a leash. Our worker receives an offer in the mail, a shiny card that promises the world. He puts it in his wallet right next to the cash. He doesn't realize that he just invited a parasite into his pocket, a parasite that feeds on the future to pay for the present. The dynamic in his factory is shifting too. The noise of the machines is the same, the heat is the same, but the suits in the office upstairs are looking at charts, not people. Efficiency becomes the new god. They start talking about cost cutting. They start squeezing the lemon just a little harder. Our worker comes home tired. He sits at the kitchen table with a pencil and a notepad. He does the math. The mortgage is fine. The car is fine. but the margins are shrinking. The savings jar on top of the fridge is getting lighter. He used to put $20 in there every week. Now it is 10. Next month it will be 5. He looks at his wife, and for the first time, he sees a flicker of worry in her eyes. She mentions that the neighbor's wife took a part-time job answering phones. Just for some extra spending money, she says. But he knows. He knows it's not for spending money. It's for survival. The single income is starting to suffocate. The walls of the middle class are closing in, slowly, silently, like a room filling with gas. You can't smell it yet, but if you strike a match, the whole thing blows. And in Washington, the politicians are printing money to pay for a war in the jungle and a great society at home. They are diluting the soup, adding more water to the pot, hoping no one notices the flavor is gone. Our worker sleeps a little less soundly. He checks the locks on the doors twice. He feels like something is being taken from him, but when he looks around, everything is still there. That is the genius of the crime. They don't take your stuff. They take the value of the money you used to buy it. And the biggest theft of all is just around the corner. It is Sunday evening, August 15th, 1971. The living room is bathed in the blue glow of a television set. The family is gathered for their favorite show, but the screen flickers and cuts to the face of President Richard Nixon. He looks serious. He looks authoritative. He looks like a man about to commit a robbery in front of 300 million people. He announces that the United States is temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That word, temporarily, was the most expensive lie ever told. In that split second, the anchor was cut. The dollar ceased to be a certificate for a piece of gold in a vault and became a piece of paper backed by nothing but promises. Our worker watches the broadcast. He doesn't understand the complex economics. He doesn't know what fiat currency means. But he feels a cold shiver run down his spine. He feels the ground beneath his house turn into quicksand. The rules of the game have just been rewritten, and nobody gave him the new rulebook. The next morning he goes to work, but the world has changed. The prices at the gas station are ticking up, not by cents, but by nickels and dimes. The raise he begged for last month has already evaporated before it even hit his bank account. He is running on a treadmill that is speeding up, and his legs are starting to give out. If you believe that decoupling our money from gold was the beginning of the end for the middle class, hit the like button. Let's see how many of us see through the smoke and mirrors. The silence in his home is replaced by tension. The single income is no longer enough. It is not a luxury anymore. It is a mathematical impossibility. He sits at the kitchen table, head in his hands. The shame is burning a hole in his chest. He feels like a failure. He feels like he isn't man enough to provide. But it's not his fault. The currency is rotting in his pocket. Then comes the hardest day of his life. His wife walks into the kitchen wearing a uniform. Maybe it's a diner waitress dress. Maybe it's a cashier's smock. She forces a smile and says it will be good for her to get out of the house. He knows she is lying to protect his pride. She is going to work because they are drowning. The single-income miracle is dead, buried in a shallow grave by government decree. Now they need 2 engines just to keep the plane from crashing. They are tired. They are irritable. The family dinner, once a sacred time of abundance, becomes a rushed affair of cheap casseroles and exhausted silence. The house they live in, the one he bought with grease and sweat, is now an asset bubble he can barely maintain. He looks at his children and wonders how they will survive. He realizes that he is the last of his kind, a dinosaur watching the meteor hit the earth. The era of abundance is over. The era of scarcity has begun. And as the 70s drag on, things don't get better. They get harder, colder, and more desperate. He realizes that the system isn't broken. It was built this way to extract his life force, hour by hour, dollar by dollar. We fast forward to the present day. The smoke from the steel mills is gone, replaced by the silent hum of server farms. The 1960s worker is long gone, but his grandson stands in the middle of a Best Buy. He is surrounded by walls of 4K televisions that are thinner than a credit card. He has a supercomputer in his pocket that can access all human knowledge. He is wearing designer sneakers. On the surface, he looks like a king. He looks infinitely richer than his grandfather ever was. But this is the greatest optical illusion ever performed. This is the anesthesia they gave us while they performed surgery on our wallets. We traded the white picket fence for a Netflix subscription. We traded the deed to a house for an iPhone on a payment plan. The grandson walks out of the store with a new gadget, feeling a momentary hit of dopamine. He gets into his car, which is really just a computer on wheels, and drives home. But he doesn't drive to a 3-bedroom house he owns. He drives to a 600-square-foot apartment that costs him 50% of his take-home pay. He has roommates at age 30. He has a master's degree framed on the wall that cost him more than his grandfather paid for his entire home, and that degree is currently serving him coffee. This is the survival strategy of the modern era: distraction. We are drowning in cheap plastic goods from overseas while the cost of being alive, housing, healthcare, education, has gone vertical. They made the toys cheap so you wouldn't notice that the kingdom was being sold off. If you look at your own expenses and feel like you are running just to stay in the same place, drop a comment below saying, "Rat race." I want to see how many of us are trapped in this cycle, because the math is undeniable. In 1960, a house was twice the average yearly salary. Today, in many cities, it is 10, 12, even 20 times the average salary. The bridge has been burned. The ladder has been pulled up. The grandson sits on his rented couch, eating delivery food that cost him an hour of labor. And he wonders why he feels so anxious. He wonders why he can't sleep. It's because deep down, his primal brain knows he is vulnerable. He knows he owns nothing. He is a serf with a smartphone. The system shifted from rewarding production to rewarding asset ownership. If you didn't own a house or stocks before the music stopped, you were left without a chair. The single income miracle wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. It was about the ability to look at your family and know with absolute certainty that you could protect them. That feeling has been evicted. And in the final part of this story, we have to ask ourselves, is it gone forever? Or is there a way to escape the trap that was set for us 50 years ago? The answer might be the most painful part of all. So, here we are. We have traced the bloodline from the abundance of the steel mill to the anxiety of the gig economy. We have seen how the promise of a single income was dismantled, brick by brick, law by law. And now you are left with the most important question of all. What do you do about it? Waiting for the politicians to fix this is like waiting for the arsonist to put out the fire. They won't. The system is working exactly as it was designed to work for them. It relies on your ignorance. It relies on you thinking that if you just work harder, if you just skip that latte, you will magically teleport back to 1960. You won't. The dollar in your pocket is not the same dollar your grandfather held. His dollar was a store of value. Your dollar is a melting ice cube. If you try to save your way to wealth using the old rules, you will lose. The harsh reality is that the single income miracle was not a miracle. It was a contract, a social contract that said, if you gave your time and your loyalty, the system would guarantee your security. That contract has been shredded. The pieces were thrown into the wind in 1971. We are now living in a world of financial Darwinism. The only way to survive the modern era is to stop thinking like a worker and start thinking like an owner. The people who are winning today are not the ones with the highest salaries. They are the ones who own the assets that inflate while your currency devalues. They own the houses, the stocks, the businesses. They realized that the game had changed, and they stopped playing by the rules of the dead. This story wasn't meant to make you depressed. It was meant to wake you up. Nostalgia is a dangerous drug. It feels good to look back at the chrome bumpers and the cheap steaks and wish we were there. But we can't live in the past. We have to survive the present. The American dream isn't dead, but it has been privatized. It is no longer a birthright. It is a prize for the few who understand how the machine works. So, look at that old photo of the 1960s family one last time. Don't look at it with envy. Look at it as a reminder of what was taken from you, and let that anger fuel your next move. Educate yourself. Buy assets. Protect what is yours. Because nobody is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. If this video opened your eyes to the reality of our economy, make sure you are subscribed. We are going to keep digging into the truth that they don't teach you in school. The past is gone, but your future is still up for grabs. Don't let them take that too.